So that is Back to You by FiCat here on Wired FM. Fanula should be joining me here right now. Can you hear me, Fanula?
Oh, I just unmute myself. Yeah, I'm here. How are you?
How's it going? Not too bad. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Really good. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. So I suppose just to get started, can you give us a bit of an introduction to your music? Can you kind of explain what it's all about and how you got started?
Yeah, so it basically started in lockdown, actually, which a lot of people don't know. I had moved back from Berlin, where I was over playing with my previous band, Toy Soldier, and I moved back, and then I hadn't planned on really writing or releasing anything, and then lockdown happened, and I think people go back to their passions in a
Yeah.
situation where they need to escape, kind of. So I just started writing again. There was a big piano in my parents' house, started writing some riffs, and just kind of hooked up with this producer. We actually met online. He's Leitrim based, and I just sent him my ideas and he sent me his ideas. And then we had like written a whole album pretty much by time. Well, I was going to say by time lockdown is over, but it's still lockdown. But yeah, we wrote a whole album, and it's kind of like an electro pop vibe. So a lot of melody hooks and stuff. And it's really, yeah, very much pop, shiny pop, which it's very different to what I used to play. But it's fun, it's nice to create something like that.
So can you give us a bit of an insight? Can you give us a bit of a background as to, because as I said earlier on, you've had quite a history. You've travelled all over the world, basically. So can you give us a bit of a history as to
Yeah.
what your history was with music before?
Yeah, so I started, the first place I ever went was Nashville when I was a good bit younger with my first band. So I've kind of been playing in bands my whole life, since I was in school. And we were very much country rock. So we
Okay.
decided to record our first EP in Nashville, which was kind of a mad idea. We were so young, we were like, we just want to go there and kind of record there in a studio. And we had a manager over there at the time, so he organized the whole thing, and we recorded our EP there. And so, yeah, that was amazing. That was my first kind of experience of traveling with music, I guess. And then when I came back a few years later, I joined Toy Soldier, who were a Cork-based band, and we gigged around the Irish scene for a few years. And then we decided to go to Berlin. Our sound was kind of getting a bit darker. We wanted to kind of go somewhere to be inspired, somewhere new. And we'd heard so many things about Berlin. I mean, Depeche Mode was a huge influence of
Yeah.
ours. So we wanted to kind of go there and see what that was like. So, yeah, so then we went to Berlin. We were there for like 3 years, and then I moved back. So, yeah, definitely have gotten to travel a bit with the music thing, which has been amazing.
Yeah, so and you've definitely kind of changed a lot in that time. You've definitely, like as you said, you've been
Yeah.
involved in a lot of different bands since you were in school, basically. But when you came back to Ireland and decided to start doing what you're doing now, I suppose what kind of influenced you to kind of go in a more pop direction, let's say?
I think it was really the kind of mood at the time, like being in lockdown and feeling a bit kind of heavy. And there was that general feeling in the world of like, a pandemic. And I kind of just, when I was sitting at the piano, I just wanted to write something really kind of happy and escape, something that would help
Yeah.
me escape. And I've always loved pop music, even though I've dabbled in, country and trip hop and darker rock and stuff. I think pop melodies were always kind of something I brought to the
Okay.
table. So yeah, I think it kind of, yeah, it was just to lift the mood a little bit. I always had this, like guilty pleasure of loving Britney Spears and all those kind of things, and I wanted to write, music that was just really accessible to people and like happy. And yeah.
So, your latest single called "Back to You" just came out, and it's actually your third single this year. So, do you think that it's been a busy year ever since lockdown began?
Definitely. Like I never expected, before lockdown that I'd have like 3 singles out by this stage. I didn't even have plans to do anything like that.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people have actually commented saying, God, you're really throwing out the singles there. But I think because I'm so excited and I'm so kind of re-energized with it that I just want to put them all out. I'm really, when you're just so excited for people to
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
things, you're like, I just want to keep putting it out. So that's kind of my plan, just to keep up that momentum for the next, few months and stuff, and see where it takes me. But I think the best thing is to just kind of do it because you love it, and then
Yeah.
don't have expectation and just see what people think of it. And yeah.
So, do you think it's been difficult to not be able to perform live or anything like that this year?
Yeah, I think that, like, for me, kept performing, you know, even when I wasn't in the bands and stuff. I've always been doing kind of cover gigs, and, you know, live performing for me has
Yeah.
always been a big part of my life and stuff. So it's definitely something I really miss. And obviously with writing new music as well, there's no better tester than to like play it live and see what people think. So it's definitely been hard in that way, because you can't really get the initial reactions, or you don't really know how people are taking it. Like, it's hard to judge off streams and different things. So I'm definitely missing that, and that's something I'm really looking forward to with them, because I have a gig in next July now, so in Whelan's. It's quite a bit away, but I'm really living for that kind of experience.
So, do you think that the business side of things, let's say, has been more difficult? Do you think that kind of getting it out to radio stations and stuff has been more difficult than it would have been without a lockdown?
Do you know what? I think actually, in a way, it's kind of been easier, just because I feel there's certain radio stations that are really stepping up to the plate to like help promote Irish artists,
Okay.
like 2FM, for example. I just find they're being a lot more open, because they realize musicians don't have the outlet to gig. And so their only way to kind of get music out there is through radio. So I have noticed anyway, personally, just from, you know, approaching radio before I moved to Berlin compared to this time around, I do feel like they're being a lot more receptive and open to Irish artists. And there's definitely more of a, you know, like, support your own with some of the radio stations. So in a way, I've actually found them quite welcoming, which has been really good.
Yeah, and you know, you've been very busy yourself, so it's, you know, there's been a lot of momentum there anyway. Do you think that like when you've been writing these songs, have you just kind of been writing them kind of one after the other, or do you have kind of a backlog of things that you'd like to record at some stage?
Yeah, so for me, like, I'm constantly like recording little voice memos and melodies, and constantly writing since I'm, you know, really young. So there's always things in my kind of backlog, I guess, that I want to record. But in the case for this new project, it was very much like every day of lockdown writing another song. And it was, you know, there was a lot of, we were very fast at doing it. You know, we were both kind of, me and Diffly, the producer, we were kind of laughing at how fast we were getting the stuff done, and the kind of shifts we were putting in, like 12-hour days to get the stuff done. And there wasn't any deadline, and there wasn't any reason. I guess we were just both so into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really like one after the other. We were kind of just churning them out. But there's definitely still loads that I want to record, and I definitely want to kind of change up the style as well in the future and go down more interesting routes too. So.
And were these songs recorded in a studio setting, or what kind of way was it recorded? Because, you know, it's obviously more difficult for artists now because of
Yeah.
COVID restrictions.
Course, yeah. I've actually been lucky that I've built a little studio in my house, because
Okay.
I still work for a company in Berlin doing I do jingles for advertisements,
Yeah.
which is quite fun. So I have to have a studio set up anyway to record vocals and stuff. So I did everything myself, you know, at home, and then I'd send the vocals on to Diffly, who'd then produce them and produce the track, and then we'd send it on to be mixed and stuff. So it was all done kind of what you call it, like remotely,
Yeah.
and from home. Yeah.
So, you know, with this whole project, obviously, it's all kind of, it just kind of started suddenly. But are you kind of building up to anything? Do you want to release an EP or an album sometime in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm still deciding whether that will be an EP or an album. I have enough songs for an album, but I also wouldn't mind doing an EP and then maybe keeping the album for later on again.
Yeah.
But there'll definitely be a big release next year, probably the summer of next year. So I'm definitely building up for either an EP or an album. So I still have to decide what kind of thing that will be. But just kind of probably around the July gig in Whelan's, I'll probably align it with that. So.
Okay. In terms of the music itself, you know, obviously you kind of explained what it is, but in terms of, is there any particular artists that come to mind when you think of influences?
I love like like when I was young. I don't know if you remember those Weetabix tapes. There was like mixtapes that used to come with Weetabix, and we used to play them in the car like when I was a kid, and it was all like kind of the old pop in like the 80s and the 90s.
Okay.
So like Tina Charles and like obviously Queen and like those kind of inspirations. And I love Kate Bush. Kate Bush, like, vocally is just, to me, like, I love it. So they'd be big influences. And I guess I'd love to explore kind of the Kate Bush sound more as well going forward, just to bring a kind of dark, or not darker edge, but more kind of quirky edge to the vocal. And then I listen to a lot of like my kind of taste in music is really broad. So I love rock, like I do love rock music, and trip hop, like Massive Attack. And so there's kind of a really broad influence, but definitely the older stuff, like I think that's when, when you're like the age of 10 and you're listening to the music your parents listen to, that's when I think it makes such an impression on you for like the future and stuff.
So, so you mentioned that you've worked in creating jingles and music for companies and that kind of thing. Can you tell us a bit about that work and what I suppose the challenges are of it?
Yeah, so it was really random. Like in Berlin, I was playing this open mic night one night with the band, and afterwards this guy approached me and he said, I work in an advertising company and we write kind of jingles, and it's actually for a Japanese market, so they're ads to use in Japan.
Okay.
So it all sounded very interesting, but he said, look, it's paid work and we'd love to, try you out for it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went along, and it was an advert for Coca-Cola, Japanese advert, and they just asked me to, sing this melody, and I recorded it and they were really happy. And then it just started to become this regular job. I'd go to the studio and record ads for like Pantene, Toyota, like all these big brands and
stuff. Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's been really cool. And then I got involved in the actual writing of the jingles, so writing the melodies and the lyrics and stuff, which was a whole other world then. And it's really interesting work, because you have like a time limit, so that's a bit of a pressure, but you'll be given a brief and they'll say you need to write, they'll give you the video and they'll say you need to write like a piece of music for this ad or whatever, and then you've got like a few hours to kind of like bash it out and then send it back, and then if they're happy, there can be really good money in it as well. So it's been really good. Like I did a Febreze ad recently that got picked and by Febreze in the USA, and that was a really nice payout. So it's really good. Like it's touch and go with the like how much you're going to get paid and stuff, but if you do land on something, it can be really good.
So obviously you named out there a lot of different brands and a lot of different companies. I suppose, what is different to doing that kind of work? What is different, and what would you say is similar to writing a single, let's say?
Well, I think because with those ads, you're given the brief, so it's very limiting. Like they'll tell you exactly what maybe buzzwords they want to use, the message that they're sending, like how long it's going to be, and they can be so fussy, like even with the way you deliver your vocal. Like I remember I had to do like one in Japanese before, and I had to learn, it was like Japanese but in a French accent, so I had to go into train to learn how to do it like for a few hours before I actually performed. And it's so particular, so it's very limiting, and like you're doing it for someone else, so it does essentially feel like a job. Whereas writing a single, it's yourself indulging, you're kind of doing it because you love it, you're sending your own message, there's no limitations. So I guess in that way it's writing a single doesn't feel like work as such.
Yeah, and that's kind of related to my next question. I hear very different mixed opinions on, let's say, the business side of things in terms of getting your songs out to radio stations and that kind of thing. And now obviously you said that it's a lot easier now because of a lot of stations are really promoting Irish music because of the lockdown. But I suppose more generally speaking, do you feel like you're putting on different hats, let's say, that you're kind of switching between different roles when it comes to the promotion of the music?
I definitely do, because even before with Toy Soldier, like we had a manager who kind of took care of so much of that stuff. Whereas with this project, because it's so new, like I haven't looked into getting management or anything. So I'm doing all of the, the planning and the promotional stuff. And it's definitely hard because it's not, the business side of things is not where I'm talented, I guess. Like I'm, because I think every artist is the same. I mean, most musicians do stuff because they love it, not because they want to get paid. So your focus or reason for doing things are quite different to how maybe a manager would see it.
Okay.
So in that way, it is difficult. I'm trying to get better at it. I'm trying to, plan things better and be better at the social media stuff and all. But generally I just want to sing and put out a song and then just let it, take its own life. But it's not that simple, I guess.
So looking forward, you mentioned the Whelan's gig next July, hopefully, and that you eventually want to build up to an EP or an album. But I suppose, speaking more broadly, what are your plans going forward for the new year?
So like I guess like really to be gigging as much as I can. And obviously that's something that needs to kind of figure itself out with everything that's going on in the world. But I'd love to like be doing the festivals, you know, next summer. I'd love to be gigging around Ireland and the UK. Just getting out and performing the songs would be my
Yeah.
main goal, really. And taking the music then to the next level will be, yeah, my plan.
Okay, well that's fantastic. Well, watch this space anyway, and wishing you all the best. So we're almost out of time, I'm afraid. I suppose just before we finish up, can you give us, for anyone that's looking online, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. So it's FiCat20 is the kind of name for everything. So it's twitter.com/FiCat FiCat20. And then on Spotify, it's FiCat, so FICAT to search me on Spotify. And then Facebook, FiCat20, Instagram, FiCat20, all FiCat20. So yeah, it's pretty easy to find me, I think. FiCat is a unique name as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and hopefully we'll hear a lot more from you in the new year.
Thanks so much for having me, Dylan. It's
My
been lovely
pleasure.
to
Thanks
chat.
very much.
Okay, bye
Bye bye.
bye.
Best of luck.